Today, we're going to unpack a really powerful homily that takes an ancient story and uses it to shine a light on a blind spot in one of our most treasured ideas, the American dream. And really, it all comes down to a simple but pretty heavy question about what we see, what we choose to ignore, and what happens because of that choice.
All right, so first things first, we need to get into the story at the heart of this whole analysis. Now, it's a super famous parable, but the argument we're about to explore is that most of us, well, we kind of miss the real point.
So the setup is about as stark as it gets. You've got this rich man who has everything he could ever want. Fine clothes, amazing food, the whole deal. And then, literally right outside his front gate, there's a beggar named Lazarus who is suffering, starving. And then, just like that, they both die. And in that moment, everything gets flipped upside down.
So what happens on the other side? Well, Lazarus, the beggar, he's carried off to paradise. The rich man, he finds himself in torment. And this is the real puzzle, right? Because when you think about it, the rich man didn't seem to do anything actively evil. It's not like he kicked Lazarus or yelled at him. So why is he the one condemned? The answer, it turns out, is way deeper than just be nice to poor people.
Okay, so this is where the analysis makes this incredible leap and connects that ancient puzzle directly to our world. It uses the story to look at two totally different versions of the American dream.
So on one hand, you have the ideal version of the dream. This is the one rooted in community, where my pursuit of happiness is supposed to contribute to the good of everyone. It's the one that says our rights come from a creator. But then there's this other version, the individualistic dream. And this one prizes personal ambition above all else. It's all about my rights, and it can become, as the source calls it, an opiate for the masses that just creates a society of winners and losers.
And here we see the real danger of that second dream. The argument is that when the American dream gets disconnected from any kind of higher purpose or truth, it stops being this great unifying idea. Instead, it just becomes a source of conflict, a constant battle of my rights versus your rights, and it ends up fueling the exact kind of tribalism and culture wars we see all around us today.
Okay, so let's circle back to our rich man from the story. If his sin wasn't some obvious act of cruelty, then what in the world was it? Well, the source gives us a really detailed breakdown of his guilt.
And here it is. This is the core insight. The rich man's sin was a sin of omission. It wasn't about an evil action he took. It was about his failure to act, a failure to even see. It was this profound indifference that came from a much deeper spiritual problem. It was all about what he failed to do for the man suffering right at his gate.
Now, the analysis gets even more specific, and this is fascinating. It actually puts the rich man's inaction on trial against the 10 Commandments. And the verdict, guilty, not for being cruel, but for breaking the very first commandment, to love God above all things. See, his wealth had become his real God. And that led to him breaking the second commandment because his faith was basically hollow. It even made him, as the source says, guilty adjacent of killing, by just standing by while Lazarus wasted away, and of stealing, by hoarding resources that could have saved a life.
So the bottom line is this. His indifference to Lazarus wasn't just some personality flaw. It was a direct result of his priorities being all messed up. Because he didn't truly love God, he was completely incapable of truly seeing and loving his neighbor.
So, if this spiritual blindness, this indifference, is the disease, then what's the cure? Well, the source offers a really powerful antidote to this problem.
The cure has a name, radical solidarity. Now, this isn't just about, donating a little money here and there. It's about an active, committed love for our neighbors, especially the most vulnerable. It's presented as the real-world, hands-on expression of a life of faith and true freedom.
And this quote, which is highlighted in the homily, just makes the whole message feel incredibly urgent. It basically reframes the parable for right here, right now. It argues that there's still a Lazarus at our collective doorstep today, and that our prosperity comes with this profound responsibility to actually do something.
So, okay, how do we actually do this? How do we practice this solidarity? The source points to some advice from St. Paul as a practical guide. First, you've got to keep your eyes on the ultimate prize, eternal life, so you don't get lost in chasing worldly success. Then, you have to actively compete well for your faith. It's not a passive thing. And finally, you have to live by the commandments as a whole, not just picking and choosing the parts that are convenient for you.
But the parable doesn't just end there with a nice, simple lesson. It actually closes with this really chilling warning about human nature, and the source argues it's maybe more relevant today than ever before.
So the rich man, from his place of torment, begs for Lazarus to be sent back from the dead to warn his brothers. And the response he gets is just stark. It's basically, look, if they won't listen to the wisdom they already have, they're not going to be convinced even if someone literally comes back from the grave.
And the argument is that we resist uncomfortable truths in the exact same ways today, often without even realizing it. We worship these convenient gods of money, comfort, or status. We're scared that if we really committed to a life of faith, it would demand real uncomfortable changes to how we live. And we just let the constant noise of the world drown out the truths that challenge us.
And that brings us to the final, really challenging question this whole analysis leaves us with. It forces us to look past the ancient story and the big ideas. In our own lives, right now, in our personal pursuit of success and our dreams, who is the Lazarus at our gate? Who are the people or what are the problems that we've just stopped seeing? It's a question that asks not just what we believe, but how we're actually living.